All right, let's fill out a listing agreement. So the first step that I do with my iPad is I pull up the listing agreement that I've already got in there, so I don't have to recreate it every time. And then I come over here and click Save a Copy. Well, I didn't have to do it that way because I already have it in there, so I can hit Save a Copy and it will save me time. I just come over here and I click off the Farlow. And we're going to sell 123 C or B C D Street. Okay, and then you keep dash listing agreement on there, and that's going to make it easy for you to keep track of what the files are and what they're called. And so it is saving that for us. Once that's done, now you can see we're on that tab right there, and this is called PDF Expert is what I'm using. I have to pop it off of here so that I can set it down and write. See if we can get the camera on there better. Okay, click here, and then I'm going to tip it over on the side there, and we're going to put in, of course, 1, 2, 3, BCD Street in Quincy. How did you find us? This is really important, and this is the listing timeline of events. And this, I tell everybody, is how we coordinate between the sellers, between me, and then also the office, right, with Rochelle. So that way everybody is on the same page. So it's nothing like contractual or any of those kinds of things. It just keeps us all on the same page. How did you find us? This is a biggie right here. We want to know what's working. So let's say Facebook. All right, so we can put that on there. And then we want to make sure that we get all of our paperwork complete, including the disclosures. Date that property is ready for pictures. This is up to them, right? So when you're all done with your listing presentation, there are only two things that have to be figured out. There we go. The first one is just the price. The second one is the date that the house will be ready for pictures. And so let's just say today is February 5th, and let's say they'll be ready for pictures on Wednesday. So we would put down there 2/7/24, and then the date the property is going to be active in the MLS is 2 days after the picture. The photographer needs a little bit of time to get that to us. They also generally need a little bit of time to be able to get the pictures scheduled because they can't just go out there right now in 5 minutes and go take pictures. They've got a lot of people they're working with. So generally I put 2/9 here. Okay, so it'll be pictures on the 7th, and then we'll do on Friday the 9th. All right, so give an extra key for the lockbox. Yes, no, code to the house. You've got all that. And then this house information is good, just general information that we can share in our office. I'm just making stuff up. It's attached. It's a 2-car garage. Is there a basement? Yes, it's full, and yes, it's finished. Okay, so the seller information, we're just going to put here Bob, and we're going to put Bob at AOL.com, just making stuff up. Cell 217-555-1212, and this could be Mary. You know, you get the idea, etc., etc. Contact for showings. FYI is good if it's a go and show if the house is vacant. Confirm is really important. Obviously, this will have information in it. That way they get notice and you can explain to them at that time when they get the note. Bob can go ahead and confirm it, and then Mary will see that it's confirmed, or Mary can confirm it, vice versa, but they'll both be able to see it. Marital status. This is just good information for us when we get to the title company. So if they're married, widowed, divorced, whatever the case might be, the title company needs to do that, and that just saves Rochelle some time later on. And then, of course, because we're confirming it, you know, they're occupied. And then sometimes we have tenants. And so if we've got tenants, we put them on there and they could get notified as well. The listing agreement, so the seller, Bob and Mary, I didn't give them last names, but we'll go Bob and Mary here. The property address, again, if you'd forgotten what the address is, you just go back up here. 123 BCD Street Don't worry so much about the tax ID number. You can leave that blank. And it's here in Quincy, 62301. Brokerage services coming soon. Marketing price. So we need to figure out what the price is going to be, and that's really up to the sellers. And you learned that when we're going through the listing presentation. But they're just going to put in here, they're going to put $329.9. And then today is February 5th. So a lot of times people put 6 months on here. Why not go 8 or 9, right? Like, we're going to try to get it sold. And I'll generally have this filled out before I get there, and I'll just highlight it. But it's February, so I'd probably put like 9:30. And I always look for the end of the month, right? I want mine to expire at the end of the month, not like all over the place. The commission is 6%, and you can see that 2.5% of that is going toward the buyer agent, and then our minimum is $3,000 with $1,250 going to the buyer agent. So that's really important. If they have questions, you can kind of explain that to them. Protection period, 90 days. This just means that if for some reason during the time that we have this agreement in place, we show it to somebody, somebody comes along, they're interested in it, and it expires, shame on you that it expired, but if it expires, they have to wait 90 days before they can sell it to that person, or they owe us the commission for the agreement. Any questions on this first page? If not, go ahead and initial there. It's exactly how I do it. Most of them are not going to want to rent. That's why I crossed through that. Seller's designated agent, that's going to be you. So you want to put that in there. Home warranty program, I never offer them up front. There was a time when I tried and it didn't seem like it did any good, so it didn't matter. Real property disclosure, we're going to get to that in a minute. That's exactly how I say it to them. Buyer's agent, I said this really doesn't affect you because we don't do dual agency. And you can see how I've crossed through this already. Cooperation compensation, we fully cooperate. And if you've done your listing presentation right, they understand that 35% of the buyers come from other agents. And so we fully cooperate and compensate. And that's what this 2.5% is up here. And that seems to be a pretty, when you look at the listings that are out there, they'll range between 2 and 3. 2.5% is something that is going to keep buyer agents interested, and because we never want to do anything that will discourage buyer agents, because that's 35% of the way the buyers find the house that they're going to buy. Buyer confidentiality, again, not necessarily applicable because we just don't do dual agency. Brokers affiliates, we don't get kickbacks from anybody, so we're not tied to anyone that way. Referral of prospective purchasers, this is a good one to point out and just say, hey guys, we're working together now, so from now on, when someone says, hey Bob, I heard you guys are selling your house. Yep, give Jeremy a call. Okay. Real estate access, we have got state-of-the-art lock boxes that have the combination codes that are specifically tied to that realtor that day. So we know exactly who was there. They can't go in early, can't come, they can't go in later. It's only good for that day, and we know when they came and who it was. So any questions on page 3? No? Okay, go ahead and initial there. Marketing. I've gone ahead and I've marked all of these for you, Bob and Mary, because this is how I market. I need to be able to put your house out there on social media. I need to be able to put your address out there, etc., etc. These initials in here, just for your information, are only if these boxes are checked no. So these do not need to be initialed. Use of listing content, intellectual property license. This allows us to syndicate their pictures and their information about their house and everything else to the 100+ websites that we send it all out to. Default by buyer. What happens if we get a deal together and then the buyer walks or something happens there? The deal doesn't close. Okay. In that instance, they don't owe us any commission. What about the earnest money? That's something where it takes the buyer and the seller to agree to put it in, and that happens at the time of a purchase agreement is signed. And it takes 2 signatures to get it out. Just because it should come to us doesn't mean it will. Most buyers are reasonable and they follow the rules, but sometimes there are people who don't. And so we just need to know that up front. We'll want to get earnest money, but it doesn't mean that we always get it. What you can take and what must remain. If you have a question on something, let me know. Clearly the kitchen counters and cabinets, those things all stay, but couches and chairs, those go. But if you get into something where you're not quite sure, just let me know. And then any questions on page 4? No? Okay, go ahead and initial there for me. Property representation. Hey, you know what? We are on the same team. So we both want to get your house sold. And so when we put your house out there, if for some reason, we said it's got 3 bedrooms and we put 4, let us know. Let's fix that. Or 2, same thing. Or if you see something that you'd like to have changed, let us know because we really want to get your house sold. Brokerage hold harmless. This is legal mumbo jumbo that basically says the buyer and seller are the 2 parties to the contract. We are not a part of that. So, and then you can read through all of those kinds of things too. And, during showings and those kinds of things, we're doing everything that we can to take care of it, but bad people exist, and so we're not responsible if somebody comes through and steals stuff. Headings, binding agreement, equal opportunity housing. The color of money is green. That's exactly what I say. And they usually chuckle on that. And so then have them sign here. Now dates, okay? Now look at this. It won't go into the MLS until 2/9, but we can't advertise it until this effective date. So we've got to date this for 2/8. Okay, so you want to sign everything 2/8/24 because that allows us to put the sign in the ground the day before, which starts to get a little bit more buzz before it goes into the MLS. I like to do Facebook live tours, video walkthroughs the day before it goes into the MLS as well, which I can't do unless this says 2/8, and that's why we do that. Okay, the addendum to it. So we're going to put in here 123 BCD Street, city, and you want to have all of this filled out ahead of time because then it doesn't take as long and they don't even think about it. They just they kind of scoot through it a little bit more quickly, and it gives you a chance to kind of focus on what's really important. And so I generally will mention this to them when they're asking me price. I'm up here and you're going down through it and say, hey, it's 6% is our commission, and we have a $5.99 transaction fee. And I've already shown them at this point the net sheet. Okay, so you always want to show them the net sheet because how much money are they going to get when they sell their house? And they're like, oh, okay, that was already built in there. Yes, because I just want to know what kind of cash they're getting at the end of the day. And so you put this in here and say, hey, this is the addendum that I was talking about before. And you can see the $5.99. A couple of things I want to go over with you first. Provide us with a key that we can put in the lockbox. Have your home clean, mint condition for pictures and showings. If you've done your listing presentation right, you've explained to them that it's location, condition, price, right? The better the location, the better the condition, the better the price. And so that's why we push for that. Take responsibility, making sure the yard sign is vertical and in the yard at all times. And what I'll say is like, hey, you know what? We've had signs stolen before. If it's missing, you live there, just give us a call. We'll bring out another sign. We'll stick it in there, no problem. Even if it's falling over, if there's an issue, you can let us know. We'll take a look at it, fix it. But we know that 10% of our buyers come from the sign, and so we want to make sure that we're getting as much action out of that as we can. Keep utilities active, maintain a reasonable temperature in the home. Oftentimes, sellers are going to want to drop their thermostat, particularly in the winter time, and pipes freeze when the thermostat is much less than what it was before because it doesn't keep the pipes that are out on the outside wall warm enough, and then they will potentially freeze. So you think you're safe at 50 because pipes don't freeze till 32, but I've just seen it happen. So I generally will recommend in the wintertime at least 60, 65 is better, and in the summertime, 75, 80 is kind of pushing it because you want them to see that everything is working. And it's like we're trying to market this, we're trying to advertise it, and the temperature is really part of the condition. Keep the utilities active and maintain a reasonable temperature in the home. We did that one already. Arrange for pets to be away from the home during showings. Hey, you know what? I love dogs, I love cats, I have no problem with them, but there are some people who are really scared of them. And so we want them to buy our house. They don't get the pets anyway. So we want them to buy it and we need to make sure that we're making that as easy as we can. Keep yard trimmed and snow removed. And then I kind of go over this and I say, hey, you know what? In the beginning, I used to charge everybody the same, whether it was $1 million house or if it was a $30,000 house. And that really wasn't right. It was putting too much of a burden on the $30,000 houses, and it was giving too good of a deal for the $1 million houses. So what I did is I kind of broke it back and paired it back to the base bit, and then kind of did an a la carte deal. And so this is the package that 99% of our sellers choose. This is the one that works super great. This is the one I recommend. If we wanted to add something, we can always add something. But generally speaking, we don't really find that there's much more value in this. So that's why we've just kind of stuck with that. If there is a situation where they have not had their home tested for radon, I would generally recommend the radon test. Flip that around. I would generally recommend the radon test because it's less than $100, and if there's higher radon, then they'll want to address that ahead of time. Like, you can ask me more questions about that. But I had a house one time that tested at 83, and I had another one that tested at 103.9. Keep in mind, it's supposed to be below 4.0, but the 83 or the 103.9 was fixed ahead of time. The 83, the buyer went berserk and just thought this is going to be awful. But you put the system in, it's immediately gone, just fixed like that. But I've had buyers walk at 7 because they just felt like there's no way that it could ever be fixed. So you want to have that fixed ahead of time if you're going to have an issue, or at least disclose it ahead of time if it's going to be high, so we can get that taken care of. And again, what date are we supposed to be using? 1 day before it goes live in the MLS, which is going to be 2/8/24, 2/8/24. All right, hopefully your handwriting is a little better than what I was doing there. The real property disclosure report, it's okay in our office to go ahead and pre-fill some of this stuff. As I fill this up, Bob and Mary. Okay, we have to say what date it was completed or filled out. This one's not so big of a deal, like if they wanted to complete it that date, but really to keep everything in line, just keep it all the same. Okay, 2/8/24. And then technically speaking, you are not to fill this out. You are not to read this for them. A lot of times they're like, oh, well, I've got a little drip or something in there. Is that a big deal? I'm like, they're talking about flooding and reoccurring leakage problems in the crawl space or basement. Say, you know what? It is better to over disclose than to not disclose enough, because that's going to help build credibility. And they're like, hey, I'm aware of material defects in the roof, right? Ceilings or chimneys. What they'll say is like, oh, hey, we had this really bad leak like 2 years ago, and then we had a brand new roof put on. Well, up in this paragraph here, if they would read it, it says that if there was a known issue and it was addressed and that issue is gone, we don't have to include the history. Now, if they want to include the history, hey, you know what? Knock yourself out. Just fill it out down here. So for on that one, as far as the roof goes, this says, I am aware of leaks. I'm aware of active leaks. So if there are no active leaks, the answer to that cannot be yes, right? But if they wanted to, they could come down here and they could do like 6, and just say new roof 2022, or something like that, right? Or if there's anything else in here that they say that they are aware of a problem, they need to put it down here. And the easiest way to put it down here, let's make sure you can get it. The easiest way you can get it down here is just to cite the exact number, okay? So you have them work on that by themselves. They've got to take care of that. They sign here, date, etc. And then this is the act that goes with that disclosure. And what I tell them is, I said, this act basically says, if you lied, you can get in big trouble. And if the client panics, that's a good signal that they may not be a very honest client. But if they laugh and say, oh, no problem, we told that everything was right, okay, that's a positive sign. But I have had people panic. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, did you lie? they're like, well, okay, you may not even want to work with them. And then this is confusing down here. It really is. The date provided to buyer is technically the date that they write the offer, or they pull it down off of the internet or whatever. So the seller just signs here. There's nothing to date on this act that goes with the disclosure. It's just a weird thing. I didn't create that form. Information on radon. Let me do lead first because lead makes way more sense. So clearly you put the address in here, right? You do all that stuff again with the city and state. And then down over here, you have them initial A and B, and then they have to make a choice underneath. So with lead-based paint, they know that there's lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards are present, or they have no knowledge. Okay, so they either know about lead-based paint in the house or they have no knowledge of it. And then they would just choose the one that is correct, right? Like, so they put their initials here and they choose which one's correct. And then of course down here, seller has provided the purchaser with available records pertaining to lead-based paint. If they said no knowledge, then clearly they have no records or reports. Okay, so it's really that simple. And when in all of these things, when it's talking about known, it's not guessing or I heard it looks like or I think I might. It's do you know? Has it been tested? Or do you have the education to know that it is lead-based paint? We're not guessing, okay? And then they sign and date, and then you sign and date. What's the date again? 2/8/24. And I will generally fill all of this out before they begin signing once we picked what date we're going to take pictures and that kind of thing. So understanding how the lead-based paint makes the radon a little bit easier to understand, because here, whoever made the Illinois radon one just put 4 choices here, which is, it would have been so cool if they had had initials with 2 check marks, right? But the seller just needs to go down through here and they need to decide what's going on, and they need to initial each of the following which applies. Whether they have elevated radon or they have no knowledge of elevated radon. Okay, whether they've provided the purchaser with the most current records and reports pertaining to elevated radon, or they have no records and reports. Okay, so it has to be this or this, right? I mean, read through those, but it has to be either A and B or C and D. It can't be A and D or B and C, right? It doesn't work. It's got to be like that. And then they come down here, they sign and date. And this one's a little tricky because the address is at the bottom. Lead-based paint, it's at the top. Real property, it's at the top. So you just have to make sure you catch that, and then you get it all completed. And then I've got a little extra blurb that I put on here. I generally touch on it and I say, woohoo, now we're officially working together. Thanks for choosing me, ba-da-da-da-da. With today's technology, agents have their phones with them. And I kind of talk a little bit, and you can read it if you want because it's on there now. But I just basically say, hey, you're important to me. I'm going to work on it. Here are basically my hours that you can expect. And if it's an active offer, we're going to be on it right away. But if it is a, and here I said for writing and negotiating active offers, but you don't have to be responding to people at midnight or 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. There are times that you just need to be able to have time to yourself. And the reason I talk about this is I want to have that conversation with them up front, and then they're like, oh yeah, I get it. Yeah, you need to have time off. You need to have your time to recover and all that kind of stuff too. So anyway, that is the listing agreement. And then when you get done, you just click there and you hit email, flattened copy, and then you're going to want to send them a copy and also Rochelle. And you're done.